Am I the asshole for telling my mom to leave my house? Disclaimer, this is not my story. My wife died 2 years ago. I'm now a single dad of our 3 kids, 7 male and 4 female twins. Because I have to work 2 jobs, all grandparents have been babysitting a lot. My mom moved in with us 7 months ago because her rent got way too expensive, and honestly I just really needed the help. A few weeks ago my mother asked me if I would ever remarry because the kids will need a mom, and I brushed it off and asked her not to talk about that anymore. Last week she asked my kids at breakfast if they would like to have a new mommy. I snapped at her and told her to stop it. Later that day, she told me her friend's daughter is single, divorced, and would be great for me. I told her I'm not interested and not to bring it up in front of the kids. Yesterday, I came home to the girls crying and my boy trying to comfort them. I asked what happened, and my son tells me that a new mommy is coming and that they don't want a new mom. I lost it and went to my mom's room and yelled at her, then told her to get out of my house. The next day, the kids moved to stay with my brother for the night. Part 2 is up. Part 2. Am I the asshole for telling my mom to leave my house? Disclaimer, this is not my story. The kids want to stay with my brother for the night. When I came home today, she was still there and begged me to give her another chance. I said she crossed the line too many times. I said she has another night here, then she better figure something else out. My brother said I overreacted. My in-laws are on my side. And my sister said I'm an asshole. And I owe my mom a place to live. And that she is a good person. So am I the asshole? I don't know. Am I the asshole for being livid at my now husband? Disclaimer, this is not my story. My 33 female husband, 30 male, and I got married last week. I have been super chill throughout the whole wedding planning and during the actual event because I know stuff happens. And if anything goes wrong or not exactly how we wanted it, it's not that big of a deal and may even make the wedding more memorable for the guests. The one thing that I told my husband I didn't want to happen was I didn't want him to smash cake in my face. I had a suspicion that he would find it funny to do it. So during the planning, I flat out told him not to do it. I don't think it's funny. I don't want to mess up my makeup that took hours to apply. And I don't want cake on my expensive wedding dress. I told him I would be livid if he did it. He promised that he wouldn't. Well, come the cake cutting time, what did he do? Smash the cake in my face. It got on my dress and messed up my makeup, just like I knew it would. I'm pretty sure his friends convinced him to do it. Not that it makes it any better. I kept it together and went and cleaned myself up and put a smile for the rest of the reception. Part 2 is up. Part 2. Am I the asshole for being livid at my now husband? Disclaimer, this is not my story. But afterwards, I let loose on him. I yelled at him that was one thing I asked him not to do. And he promised he wouldn't. He told me that I was being dramatic, that it's not a big deal, and we should just be enjoying our time as newlyweds. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole for not paying for the food and leaving my date stranded? Disclaimer, this is not my story. My sister set me up with her friend a few weeks ago. Yesterday, I picked her up from her house and took her to a restaurant for dinner. After we finished eating, she asked the waitress to refill her glass of water. The place was packed and the waitress passed by our table multiple times. Instead of a friendly reminder, she told her if she's mentally declining, she should be in a retirement home instead of leaving people thirsty. The poor woman looked like she was about to cry. She started apologizing to my date and went to get the water. I was shocked, embarrassed, and angry at the same time. I told her why the F would she even think about that sentence, let alone say it out loud. I excused myself and went to apologize to the waitress. I paid for the food I ordered, tipped her big time, and left. This morning, my sister called me angrily, saying how much of an asshole I was for what I did to her friend. Apparently, after I left, the manager threatened to call the cops if she didn't pay. He had to call her father to send her the money for dinner and the ride back home. I explained to my sister. Part 2 is up. I asshole for not paying for food and leaving my day stranded. Disclaimer, this is not my story. Part 2. I explained to my sister what her friend did and she wasn't interested in taking my side. She told me since I picked her up from her place and since it was my turn paying for the day, I should have just did so and drove her back home or gave her money for a taxi. I wasn't interested in arguing with her, so I said I'll send the money to give to her friend and told her God have mercy on both of their future boyfriends. She said if they were an asshole like me, she wouldn't even touch them with a 10-foot
harder than it looks.
And hung up. So am I the asshole?
My 10-year-old neighbor broke my heart tonight. He lived with his aunt after his mom passed away earlier this year, and he has 2 younger sisters. I sometimes watch the kids to help his aunt out, and every time I see her, she looks worn out. A few months ago, he asked me if he could do some chores to get money because I'm rich, and he wanted to buy a birthday cake for his birthday. I asked him why he thought I was rich, and he said I always have food in the kitchen, my toilet always flushes, and the apartment was always cold. This was in the summer, so he knows that I'm rich. It was a gut punch because I'm not rich, but I do have my basic needs with a little extras like air conditioning. Tonight, he knocked on my door and asked if I knew if Santa was coming to my house, and if he was, could he and his sisters spend
Wrong
the night with the
salt.
presents they told Santa they wanted. He proceeded to say that he knows that Santa doesn't give gifts to 10-year-old big boys, but wanted his sisters to get gifts. When I asked him who told him that big boys don't get gifts, he said his aunt did. When I asked her what was going on and if she knew that there were a few organizations who would have given all 3 kids gifts, she said that she was afraid to try because she's undocumented. The fear in her eyes made mine well up because I knew she was afraid I was going to turn her in. I wish I had known sooner, even though I have nothing myself, and told her I would help. I went to the Dollar Tree and got each a Santa coloring book and markers. When I was dropping them off, he saw me and his eyes lit up and he said, "You're friends with Santa?" The joy on his face for a coloring book made me sob when I got home. I know that we're all doing the best that we can right now, but I truly hope every kid gets something from Santa. I'm 57 and my son, 28, recently approached me upset about something his sister, 30, told him about the past that she's apparently still resentful of, although she's never spoken to me about it. My daughter has always been anxious and from a young age, around 5, did a lot of weird rituals to make herself feel better. These rituals often required my husband and I to participate, and we generally went along with it to make her happy. In middle school, she stopped this habit but developed a new one where she would lie frequently to me and my husband. At one point, she was almost a month behind in school, and when her teacher reached out to us, we were both blindsided because she'd been deceiving us that everything was fine. She would also lie about things like who she was or having a boyfriend, which was very secretive. When she was in grade 7, I saw on her computer browser that she'd been Googling OCD. I questioned her about it and she said that she thought she had it and wanted to go to a doctor, using her childhood habits as proof. I thought that she was lying again to excuse her school performance, and we told her no. She intermittently argued about it with us for 2 years. At that point, I discovered by reading her journal that she'd also gone behind our backs to the guidance counselor at school and told a woman that we wouldn't help her. I grounded her for lying again, but a few months later, we did take her to the doctor. She has more or less been in treatment since then. My son recently asked me if I really denied her medical treatment. To me, she's making it sound like I was negligent when she really was a liar, and that's why we didn't take her initially. We have paid for specialists and supported her for years, and I think she's putting all the blame on me / making me look bad to my son and not taking responsibility. I'm upset with her sneaky behavior and want to confront her, but my husband said to leave it. My daughter had a wonderful childhood, and I hate that she's complaining about the past behind my back. We did our best and we did help her. She has never mentioned anything to me about still being resentful. Am I the asshole in this situation? My wife and her friend went out drinking on Friday night and she didn't come home till 4 in the morning, which had me worried sick. When she finally came home, she was very drunk and was almost being dragged by her friend. The friend had a guilty look on her face and asked me to be patient while listening to her account. I was of course alarmed. What account? The friend left saying it's better if my wife told me. My wife was obviously out at this point, so I went to sleep. Around 11 a.m., I'm woken up by my wife crying and saying that she committed a horrible mistake and she's very sorry. She was hysterical at this point and I had to calm her down, and finally after calming her down, she told me that she had gotten so drunk last night that she hooked up with a stranger. I was shocked and I pressed her for details. She said that they had met 2 guys while drinking and they were buying them rounds. At first she says she turned the drinks down, but when her friend expressed an interest in one of them, they went to talk to them and accepted the drinks from them. My wife was given the responsibility of keeping the friend of the guy busy while her friend talked to the guy. Eventually, after some time and a lot of drinks later, they went to the guy's home, and this is where she had sex with him. My wife says that she went there just to make sure that her friend was safe and she had no ulterior motive. She didn't make it some harmless flirting with the guy, but said it didn't mean anything. Sure. She was adamant that she didn't want to have sex with the guy. Then I said maybe you were forced. Let's try to find out who the guy was first. I asked for more details, but again she said that she didn't remember. So I went to the pub in the evening to ask around, and luckily the guy my wife's friend hooked up with was there too. When I talked to him, he painted a completely different picture of the night. He said that he and his friend were very clear with both my wife and her friend from the start that they were looking to hook up, and my wife and her friend never raised any objection. He also said that my wife absolutely knew what was going to happen once they went back to the house. I didn't get to meet the other guy who hooked up with my wife, but I did talk to him on the phone and he also said the same thing. Both women knew exactly what the deal was and they still went to his house. I did get heated with him, but he insisted that he didn't force anyone. He was just as drunk as she was, and it was completely mutual right from the moment they started talking at the bar. He said I could check the security footage to see how my wife and her friend were acting on that night. I tried, but they wouldn't show me the footage without a police report. I don't know what to think here. My wife insists it's not a case, but did admit to flirting with him. Those guys insist it was mutual. My wife doesn't want to file any case against them, and I'm at a loss. Only one thing is clear to me. My wife put her friend's sexual life ahead of our marriage, otherwise why go to a stranger's house after midnight? I'm totally lost. What should I do? Storytime about when I ordered not 1, but 3 adult items, getting next day delivery without realizing, and then silently watching as my dad placed them next to me. The first thing you should know is that I am not a sexual person. I barely ever have urges. I rarely even think about anything like that. My libido is comparable to that of a fence post. However, I started noticing that I was becoming increasingly bitter towards things like that, so I decided, you know what? I'm going to try and explore that side of me. Maybe bring it out a little more. And so I did. I bought 2 sex toys, nothing extravagant, just basic, cheap little items, and a bottle of lubricant because I work smart, not hard. Things should be fine, I think to myself. I'll order them and they'll come in a week or so. No one's expecting any packages then, so there'll be no issues and they'll hand it right off to me, none the wiser. And then that didn't happen. Can you believe it? No, what actually happened was worse, and proved to me that my dad is a monstrous man who lives to cause me pain. Unbeknownst to me, I was still under my trial of Amazon Prime. I'd forgotten to cancel it and the package shipped and arrived the next day. Even this should have been fine. No one in my family opens packages that aren't theirs except one little thing. My package came in with my mom's packages. I didn't realize they were coming in that day, so I was still curled up in bed watching TV. When I heard the delivery truck pull up, I thought,
Refilling
oh, cool,
the
and then
car's
went back to my
snack
show.
basket,
It just so happened
but
my
for
mom
a
pulled
road
up
trip
right straight
this
from parked
time.
for her car, and then assumed that the box was one of hers without checking the label since I hadn't mentioned ordering anything to her. According to my mom, she opened it and thought, oh, my dad must have bought something. And then she checked the label and saw my name. Did she do the respectful thing and tape it back up with clear tape like nothing happened? Did she just hand it to me and walk away silently? No, she went to my dad. Because of course she did. According to my mom, she walked in and said, our daughter ordered sex toys and I don't know how to handle it. And my dad shot up in bed with horror. A moment later, he giggled and jumped out of bed, taking the box from her saying, I want to give it to her. So he walks into my room. I say hey to him and sit up and look at him. He tilts the box towards me to show its contents.
Showing you where TikTokers are finding their containers. Part 3.
Calmly walks off. I can't look at my parents in the face anymore. I might actually have to move out. COVID be damned because my dad won't stop making masturbation jokes. So my wife, 24, and me, 27, had our son 3 months ago. Luckily, as new parents, we've had less issues compared to others in our family, but what really created an issue is the fact that my wife gets way more bonding time with my son than I do. She breastfeeds and doesn't let me come anywhere near her while she's doing it, claiming that she was already in pain and I was making her stress out with my behavior. She promised to let me have my bonding time with him once she's done, but she takes a long time feeding and then the baby goes to sleep, so I pretty much get almost no time to bond with him. It all came to a head for me last night after my wife told me to leave the room while she was feeding our son because I was bothering her and making her feel stressed out with my judgmental comments, but I was just making sure that she was feeding our son properly since she's dealing with stress and possible PPD. So I had to be present in every feeding session to make sure nothing goes wrong. And like I said before,
What do you do with the eggs left over?
And well, and I refused to leave the room. She tried to unload on me about how unsupportive and difficult I was being, but I told her that she was wrong to exclude me and take away my attempt at bonding with my son. I suggested that she switch to formula so she has no way of keeping me excluded, and again I could get 50% of the time that she has with him. She called me unreasonable and explained that even though I'm a parent too, she as a mother is essentially what our son needs and relies on, so her role is more important and she gets more time than I do simply because she's the mother. Then she explained that my request was ridiculous because she's blessed to have almost no issues with breastfeeding and switching to formula was absolutely uncalled for and cannot be afforded right now, but I disagreed and argued that she left me no choice and that she needs to respect whatever decision I make regarding our son. She said I'm delusional to think that she'll switch to formula to fix my hurt feelings. She even accused me of making this request so that my mom could meddle in and start feeding our son formula and have sleepovers since she was against her breastfeeding from the start. However, that couldn't be further from the truth. Matter of fact, I strongly believe her refusal to consider switching to formula is mainly to spite my mom, not because she thinks my request was unreasonable. Long story short, we kept going back and forth on this argument and she told me to drop it, but I refused because in my opinion, she's being selfish by how she's treating me as the other parent. Am I the asshole for suggesting that my wife switch to formula so I could have more time with our son? Story time about when I told my grown-ass college students what contraceptives are at a conservative Christian university. I'm a grad student teaching freshman English courses at a conservative Christian university. At the end of the semester, my students have to present a slideshow proposing a change they think will make the world better. One of my students, Steven, asked if he could make his slideshow about safe-sex education being made mandatory in all public high schools.
Time to refill the pantry.
The day of Steven's presentation arrives. He marches to the front and begins his slideshow, and it is titled The Case for Contraceptives. It's freaking amazing. He tells a story about bees who, if they want to get some sweet nectar from the flowers without spreading any of their pollen around, need to learn to wear little booties on their feet. I laughed through the whole thing and then turned to the class and discussed Huber raised his hand and said, Miss Holt, what's a contraceptive? I started to smile, but stopped as I realized he was being serious. I paused and remembered my life before college. She told him about there between homeschooling and church and youth group. We had a brief discussion about contraceptives then and there. The next day, my classroom behavior was under review. I was warned I was under unofficial probation. Everyone at this university signs up as an at-will employee, meaning we can be fired at any time for any reason. Story time about when I demanded my girlfriend show me where she buried our beans in the
Pantry
woods.
refills part 2.
If anything was going on, we stocked up on supplies, including beans and I ordered a few weeks ago 30 cans of beans, 10 are black beans, 10 are kidney beans, and 10 are pink beans. Also, I ordered 15 cans of chickpeas. I thought this is a reasonable amount of beans and chickpeas to have every now and then that will last for quite some time. However, earlier this week I opened the cabinet because I wanted to make vegetarian chili using 2 cans of beans, but all the beans were gone. What the hell? I asked my girlfriend and she told me that she buried all of the beans in the woods. At first I thought she was joking, but she explained, no, she had buried the beans in the woods. What the fuck? I asked her to explain and she told me that she was afraid that if things get bad, we might have to worry about looters or whatever, and that the beans would be in danger of being stolen. I said I thought this was completely ridiculous and unlikely. She became angry at me and said that she's protecting our beans. According to her logic, the beans are safely buried in the woods behind our apartment complex, and if we ever need some beans, she would go to the stash and dig up a can or two, but would prefer if we save them all for if beans get low. I said, why only bury the beans? Why not bury our more valuable items? She He said that canned food was the most valuable and long-term means, and that since we get fresh food in our online grocery deliveries, it would make sense to continue to stockpile beans. She intended to go bury more beans in the woods every week. This was too insane for me and I got very upset. I demanded to know where the beans were buried, and she refused to tell me. She said if I knew, she was afraid I'd dig them up. I said damn right I would. She said I will never jeopardize the beans. The following day, I tried to put my foot down, and I'm not usually a foot downer, but there are rare issues where compromise is out of the question, and I still should decide that this was one of those issues. I demanded to know where the beans were buried, and I told her that if she was going to bury beans that I paid for in the woods, that I would move out. We fought about it, and I kept insisting. In hindsight, I should have just let it go and created my own hidden stash of beans in the apartment and given her time to maybe cool down about this bean burying scenario, but I blew it all out of proportion. Yeah, it's weird to bury beans in the woods, but why did I have to press it? What's the harm at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things? But I kept demanding her to take me to the beans, or at least draw a map or something, and finally, she broke up with me over beans. I've lost the love of my life because I couldn't let the damn beans go. I am in disbelief. She moved out. Not only am I heartbroken, but now I'm paying full rent instead of 50%, which is a huge financial issue for me. Story time about when I messed up, I not told my wife that my son was coming home. My oldest son is in the Marines and hasn't been home in almost a year. He took 10 days leave so he could come visit. At first, we didn't tell his mother in case the leave got denied. When it was approved, he just decided to fly and surprise her. I tell my wife that I'm going over to a friend's house to watch the Packers/Falcons game as a cover-up to pick him up. I get to the airport and actually watch the second quarter of the game while waiting for his plane. He gets off the plane, we talk for a bit, waiting for the luggage, and then he goes to change into his dress blues. Now the whole time I've been texting my wife saying I was bored, the game sucked, I wasn't going to stay much longer. We discussed the plan on how to surprise his mother on the drive back to the house. We go back and forth from having her open the front door to see him on the porch to just having him walk into the house. We settle on him waiting a few minutes after I go inside as I wanted to get the whole thing on video. I walk in and the house is quiet. No one is in the living room. A little odd, but it is after 9 p.m. Maybe by some miracle my other kids are actually already in bed. Alarm bells start going off in my head when I open the bedroom door, and the first thing I notice is the flickering candlelight. What I didn't know was the entire time that I was gone, my wife set in motion her own plan for the evening. She got the kids settled by letting them keep their tablets after bedtime, took a nice hot bath, redid her makeup, and when I told her I was on the way home, lit the room with candles and put on her F me lingerie. So no shit, there I was, staring at my wife giving me her best come hither look with our 21-year-old son outside not 30 feet away, waiting to surprise her. A handful of reactions to the scene are acceptable. Pulling out your cell phone and sending a text message is not one. The text told my son to stay outside. I had solved the most immediate problem of our son walking in and seeing his mother like that, but I was drawing blank on how to fix everything else. So my brain latched onto what was the most stupid plan I have ever had in my life. I told my wife to get dressed because she would never believe what the neighbors were doing and she had to come see. The look of confusion on her face was priceless. It took me 5 minutes to convince her to put on some sweatpants and a sweatshirt to go to the front door. Finally, after dodging all her questions and getting her to open the door, there was our son in his dress uniform and she was ecstatic. The noise brought all the kids out and everyone was happy. Except me. The wife excused herself after a few minutes and took off the laundry under her sweats before anyone noticed. It goes without saying, I did not get any action that night. We used to have a beautiful bookshelf in our drawing room and it was filled with my girlfriend's books. She buys them for herself as she loves to read and I don't. Most of these books she's had since childhood. We get lots of compliments over it. She had added little potted plants, handmade photo frames with art from her favorite books and series, bookmark stands and stuff to it. Over the years, this book obsession has gone out of hand. She owns so many books. She has an Instagram page for her books. She listens to YouTubers who only talk about books. She has a lot of friends who don't really do anything but read these pretentious, fat books, unlike my girlfriend who is in law school and doing very well. She wastes money on more and more books when in my opinion she should be devoting that money to our house and relationships since it's been 3 years and we're fairly serious now. For context, we do split most of the house expenses, but she currently earns more than me because she has a really fancy internship right now. Given our respective fields, her earning more than me all through life is something I've accepted. I was worried that even after she gets a real job, she'll continue to burn all her money away instead of putting it to good use around the house. What's worse, I don't think she actually likes reading. She had a very abusive childhood and books were her coping mechanism. She doesn't live with her parents anymore though, so I don't see why she's still so attached to them. In my opinion, it's unhealthy. I'm not saying that she should be over it or anything, but her obsession with her coping mechanism is just stupid. You wouldn't mistake her for a reader if you saw her. She's very pretty and feminine with a gorgeous figure and fabulous hair. She wears makeup, dresses fancy, and is a life of the party sort of girl. So I don't think I'm wrong when I say that she doesn't actually like reading at all. So to help her out, I hid a good chunk of her books to sort of test the waters. Some of them were really old and from when she was a child in her parents' house and her favorite. I felt the experiment would be meaningless if I just hid a couple she wouldn't immediately notice even though she reads every day, so she checks her bookshelf every day. When she asked if I took them, she already looked so worried I told her that I threw them away to show her that she can be fine without them. She flipped out, threatened to leave, the whole works. I got angry and told her the truth and said that she was welcome to her shitty crutches because she had just lost her boyfriend over them. She just laughed and went to go find her books. I left the house. When I went back, she was giving me the silent treatment and at night asked me when I was planning on leaving because apparently we're over. I'm currently living on my best friend's couch who's saying that I messed up big time, but he's always kind of wanted to bang her, so I don't believe him. Am I the asshole for helping my girlfriend get over her trauma? I was 24 when I met my SO 23 3 years ago. I never wanted kids, so we always used protection, but I guess shit happens and she ended up giving birth 6 months ago. I told her when she got pregnant that I wouldn't be waking up to do anything with the baby at night because I work. If I had to tune into waking up every time he cried, I'd never get any sleep. So she's been good with being the one waking up at night. Recently I got laid off for winter, and now that I'm home, she's acting like I should be waking up at night to help her. I don't think that's that's fair because I'll end up with the same problem I stated above. When I go back to work, I can't really afford to lose sleep. Now to the incident at hand. A few nights ago, my son was being particularly fussy at night. I ended up waking up while she was getting his chair. I guess it seemed he'd be up a while. She put him in the bed when she got up, so I scooted closer and cuddled him a bit. Almost looked like he might fall asleep. A few minutes go by and he starts fussing like crazy. I look around the room and my girlfriend is nowhere to be seen. Now I'll admit, I did get angry. I was tired and it pissed me off that she just left like that. Sometimes when I get overly frustrated, I lash out at myself. This is where I think I might have been the asshole. I hit myself in the face a few times and said something I probably shouldn't have. My girlfriend came storming back upstairs with the baby monitor in her hand, saying she heard and saw the whole thing and that I was unbelievable. I smiled at her that she wouldn't know what it's like to need sleep when you work because she's never worked hard a day in her life. She's never worked as hard as I do in my current job, but we did work 2 other places together before she got pregnant. But she hasn't worked in a little over a year. I think what I said was warranted. Anyway, she said she's not even sure if she wants to be with me anymore and has been giving me the silent treatment for 3 days, even though I said I was sorry. I don't want her to make my son a fatherless child. Am I the asshole for telling my SO she's never worked hard? So my boyfriend, Kyle, 26, recently got a promotion to general manager at a restaurant he works at. I, 22, work full-time as a pediatric nurse and my hours are kind of all over the place right now because of the virus. Anyway, when he got home to get the promotion, I was ecstatic. He's a hard worker and deserves it 100%. However, because it happened on a Tuesday, we decided to go to celebrating from our mutual friend Saturday night. I was scheduled to work Saturday, but I figured as long as I was able to get home, shower, and change, all was well. I'll just sleep late on Sunday. So now it's Saturday. I unfortunately lost a patient who had been fighting for her life since birth. I've been her nurse every time I was working in that department, and her and her family were very important to me. I was absolutely devastated. When I got home, the last thing on my mind was dinner. I told Kyle about what happened, and he gave me a hug and said he's sorry to hear that. About 10 minutes later, he softly asked if I was going to shower before we leave. I told him I really don't feel like going out, but he insisted that I go since I promised, and if he goes without me, his friends will ask a lot of questions. I didn't want to, but I agreed since I promised. While I tried to keep a smile on my face, it was obvious that I was upset. One of our friends asked if I was okay, and before I could just say that I had a rough day at work, Kyle said, "She's been bitching about a patient she lost at work today," and scoffed. I was flabbergasted. He's never said anything like that before. I replied saying that patient was 3 months old. He shrugged and said it's not my own child and it shouldn't bother me this much. I was furious and embarrassed since it went down in front of our friends, so I just put down enough money for my meal and went home. I put his stuff in a box. He wasn't living with me but would stay with me a couple days out of the week. When he came back, he flipped out and I said that I just need space. That was 2 weeks ago. I have since changed the lock since he had a spare key. He says I'm overreacting and that I'm the asshole and I selfishly made it all about me. He accused me of thinking higher of myself because I'm a nurse and he works in a restaurant. Honestly, I don't know where that came from. He also said that he figured since it was a celebratory dinner for him, he thought I was going to pay, so walking out on him was very embarrassing because he didn't bring his wallet. One of our mutual friends, Amy, called me and said that while what Kyle said was fucked up, that me leaving like that was unnecessary and made the whole night awkward. I feel bad for ruining the night for everyone else, but I just couldn't let him get away with that. I'm very proud to be a nurse and I don't want anyone, especially my partner, to talk poorly about it. So, am I the asshole for walking out on dinner? As a child, whenever I was invited to people's houses, my mom told me it was etiquette to eat the food that they made. She would always tell me to put a considerable amount and eat all of it since it would be ruined onto. First, she said it would be wasting food, and second, it would seem as if I didn't enjoy the food, which is mean since a lot of effort was put into making it. I've always followed this rule and thought it was true. If I cooked a buttload of food and no one ate it, I'd be heartbroken. My boyfriend of 7 months invited me to his family's Christmas dinner. I've met his parents very briefly, but nothing too formal. Anyway, we get to the food and I was pretty hungry and everything looked really amazing. I made sure to fill my plate, but not overfill, just equal amounts of everything on the table. I ate it all and to be honest, was pretty stuffed. His mother then asked me if I wanted seconds. There was still a lot of food on the table. I took her up on the offer and put a bit more of the pasta salad. My boyfriend gave me a strange look, but I thought nothing of it at the time. Dessert comes and I chose to eat a slice of cheesecake. We then had coffee, all sitting around the fire and telling funny stories. Everyone seemed like in a very good mood and everything was great. After everything, I was honestly so happy because I was worried about dinner and meeting his parents, but I thought that everything went well. We left his parents' house in separate cars as I came directly from my parents' house to him. We reached our apartment and I can tell he's totally pissed off. I asked him what was wrong and he just blew up in my face that I had no manners, telling me he had never seen me eat as much as I did at his parents' house and it was so embarrassing. After further crying, he said in his culture when you eat out of a person's house, it's disrespectful because you should never go to a house on an empty stomach. He said that it makes a person look desperate and fat. He said on the car ride home, his mom was talking about how embarrassing and unmannered I was to eat so much. I told him that she told me to put seconds and he said that's done to be a good hostess, but I guess she'd never take up on that offer. He said it would have been fine if I had declined dessert, but since I didn't, I looked even more fat. I explained my reasoning to him and he called that bullshit. I honestly feel terrible, but I told him that if he explained to me beforehand, I wouldn't have eaten so much. He said that he thought it was common knowledge. It's been 2 days and neither of us will really talk until the other apologizes. I know it's petty not to apologize, but I sincerely don't think I did anything wrong. Am I the asshole for